everybody. I'm Jay. It's the first time here at Gangplank for me, and I'm really excited about it. I'm about a new resident to Phoenix, probably 7 or 10 days before I've actually moved in. My family is in Massachusetts, and we're moving out, and we'll be setting up shop in just about a week and a half. And so the company has been here for about a month and a half, and Phoenix is the home of Local Motors' first microfactory. So it's really exciting. It puts such a smile on my face because for 3 years we've been working on Local Motors, and we didn't know when we started the company, being that it was an open design company and that we had just a complete community choose method for which car we were going to build. We didn't know if we'd end up in the mountains, or if we'd end up in the desert, or if we'd end up in New England or Florida, or where. And so the Rally Fighter eventually emerged as the vehicle of choice, and that sort of put us somewhere in the American Southwest, or in the desert Southwest, if you will. And because the last time I checked, there weren't great deserts in Massachusetts. So we decided to come in this direction, and then it was a question of whether we were going to be in Las Vegas, or Albuquerque, or LA, or San Diego, and we looked at a bunch of traditional metrics of, where were places. In every place there was a place where people were interested in sort of the desert Southwest driving experience. But the question was more about, for a traditional car company, you would look at things like, what does the labor pool look like, and what is the interest of the town in having you there, and is there water infrastructure, and can you put a paint booth up, and that sort of thing. And all of those things didn't really matter to us, because with microfactory production, we were looking to create local jobs that were across the spectrum of automotive production, which meant sales, marketing, building, designing, engineering, servicing, all those things, all in one area. And if we were going to put them in 35 areas across the country, which I can sort of talk about, we knew that our cost of doing business was going to be blended across all of those things. So it was less about finding a great place for low-cost manufacturing, and more about finding a place which had a local interest in cars. And Phoenix really sailed above everything in that as a place to start. I mean, from things like Barrett-Jackson and the other major auto auctions, Gooding and whatnot that go here, there's already a sense of people who are interested in cars. And then just driving around the road, which we had done in a number of those cities, there was just a great vibe in Phoenix for cars. So choosing a place like this was sort of a natural for us after we got through the initial parsing process, and the Rally Fighter came home to Phoenix. So it will be sold here first, and I hope that this town is going to be, and what we set up with this microfactory will be an example for the entire country and the entire world of what's possible when you have local manufacturing and assembly and sales of cars. It's never been done before. In fact, if you take this broader, there's never been a retail concept that really is like this brought to scale, which is sort of put a name on it, we call it microfactory retailing. And we didn't invent that. There was, as far as I know, there are two professors, one from INSEAD and one from the Cardiff School of Business, that invented that phrase, microfactory retailing. But what it was talking about, or what they were talking about when they were hypothesizing it, was this idea that you could actually build something where people were going to buy it. And so hence microfactory retailing. So this would be an example of that in the car world, and we hope it is an example to every other place in the country where we'd want to put them, and every other place in the world where we want to put them. This is very much an international capable concept. You can plop this kind of a structure in the middle of Nigeria, you can make a car that's local to that area. You can put it in a place that's really come out of a recent conflict like Rwanda, where you have a country that's really moving its economic development forward quickly, and they've been looking for points of national pride or points of regional pride. And the idea of setting up a full car factory there just doesn't make sense. But if you go back to the history of Brazil or other countries which developed an automotive industry or an aircraft industry for the purposes of national pride, you can actually stretch that analogy down to more regional areas, whether they be states or cities or small countries in different places. And that's the potential of what Local Motors means. And when you do that, you get all kinds of local feedback. So one of the things that's really nice of talking about here is you've got a very Web 2.0 netted crowd. So we're here at the first @Gangplank, #BrownBag get together, and hopefully we'll be taking questions from the Twitter space and from whatever other feeds are coming in. Who's checked in on Foursquare here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who's the mayor? Do we know? It's over there, right on. And so, so you know, we've got a really netted crowd here, which is good. And I think that what that does is it serves to point out that we think about network in the Web 2.0 space only on the internet a lot, or primarily on the internet. And what microfactory retailing does is it sort of cuts a little bit against that grain, and it says you don't just have to get together on the internet. It is possible to set up brick and mortar locations where somebody can actually come in and give you their verbal feedback. You know, imagine what a great thing it is. Like, hello, can I shake your hand, kind of a thing? And so you can type most of the time, but like we can actually talk.
Right.
And so one of the nice things for us in a microfactory retail joint is somebody can come in and they can put their hands on the car, and they can come in and they can really talk to us and get underneath it and do that sorts of thing. And virtually, we can try to do that all the time with a camera, but it's never quite as good as being able to smell it, see it, feel it, touch it, that kind of thing. Okay, so we'll kick through a couple of slides. It is not my intention to bore everybody out of their seat, so and I want to get to questions as soon as possible. And so if Chris can help me go through, we'll go to the next one. This is what we think of when we think of the automotive industry. Diego Rivera was the person who sort of did it the best, where he showed sort of this massive man meets machine. And this is Henry Ford's legacy. This was Edward Deming and Frederick W. Taylor saying scientific management is the future of industrial production. Early last century, and basically saying if we take all of the ideas and we put them up at the management level, and then we parse out all of the jobs and put them down at the worker level, then basically what we'll end up with is the most efficient method of production. And I think that that served to be true for the first 70 years of the century. And then what has happened, and there are not that many people talking about it, but I am here to tell you that I am deeply interested in it, as is our team. I think that that is a failed production methodology for the future of innovation. And what it means is, if you take a look at some of the interesting statistics, when Ford set up his production line, it took him a very small number of people to find someone who would do well on his line at the beginning. Ideas would float up from the line. They had the whole Toyota production system down, even though they didn't know it, because they could actually pull an andon cord, which is sort of Sakichi Toyota's method of stopping the line in the Toyota way, and an idea would float up to the top. And then 30 years down the line, it was 635 people before he could find one person that was successful on the line. And that's a statistic that you don't hear all the time. It's meant what was happening to innovation on the line, what was happening to the kind of people that wanted to work on Deming's line or Taylor's line, and where were the ideas coming from? And now, 100 years delineated from that, where are we? Where are the people that are learning the skills on the automotive line to then take those lessons out and say, you know what? 100 years ago that worked, but now I've got all these other tools, 3D printing, all these other things, and I can actually make that work. But we have these massive silos that have been built around those production centers. Union intransigence, acid intransigence, things that keep change from happening. And so the problem is that the ideas aren't being cross-pollinated in the way that they should, and the legacy of Frederick Taylor, as magical as that was, is that we've slowed the pace of innovation in some of our largest industries, and that's what stopped automotive, for example, in going forward quickly. Each one of the industries that's been the last to be disrupted by the change in the Industrial Revolution, and we're here to sort of make a pinprick in that balloon and try to make a difference. Local Motors will not take over the industry. That's not our idea. That's not what we're about. We are about trying to sort of set things in motion that make a difference in the way that the industry operates. So, next slide. Because what happens is today you get facilities like this, which look great, and this is the Nissan plant in Smyrna, Tennessee. Here you have a cross-homologated company that's both French and Japanese, working in Tennessee, home of the music industry, for those that know the real kinds of music, both country and western. And basically this thing can make 500,000 cars a year. It costs $2.5 billion to build. It's got minimum efficient scale that rocks the industry. They can build a line that's only 30,000 small. But 30,000 is too many cars for most of us when you look at the fastest growing segment of the auto industry, which is appearance and accessories and aftermarket things. You want to change your car. But if you can only put on tinting and ground effects and chip the engine in different ways that void your warranty, you're not really changing the car today. And this isn't really allowing you to do it. And my feeling is, if you could go to the next slide, that this is the legacy that it leaves. When Nissan Smyrna is disrupted by a technology, it turns into Bellevue Avenue in Detroit. And that's a real picture from what Detroit looks like now. And most places in Detroit are running at 23+% unemployment. Anybody here from Detroit? Right there, where are you from?
I'm from Detroit.
From downtown Detroit, basically?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, Detroit's a mess, and you have to go and you have to see it. If Phoenix looked like Detroit tomorrow, we would all be up in arms. I mean, it's awful. I spend a lot of time there, and it's really a mess. And it's a sense of what an industry can do to a whole town. When it's, I mean, if you go to Rochester, you'll see the same thing. And we've done this again. If you go to Pittsburgh, you'll see the same thing. We've done it again and again and again across many of our largest cities. And the question is that sustainable? The answer is, if you think that's sustainable, then it is. I don't. I don't think that's the way, because people don't move. When your community disintegrates like this, you still live there. It's still home. And so it's hard to get up and leave and go places. And so it's a miserable way to exist. And crime comes in, and various forms of trying to keep crime from coming in happen, like casinos and other things like that. And so Detroit turns into something that it wasn't originally built to be, and that's something that's not very sustainable. So when we look at microfactory production, we're trying to fight against that trend also. So this was me when I started with the idea of locomotives. I was a Marine, and I served in a number of different theaters, and I was busy at the job of doing the military work. And then I met this idea. We all know that U.S. oil end use is one of the largest in the world, and the idea that you can see from this chart is basically this line is consumption, and this line is imports. And it's gotten more and more over this is 98 to 08. And what we're looking at is we're looking at the fact that total imports take about 60% of our consumption. That means we're importing 60% of what we use. And that's largely as a result of cars. Oil usage in energy is primarily sopped up by cars. 70% of our oil use goes into cars and light trucks. A little bit into planes, a little bit into buses, but primarily it's into cars and light trucks. So if you want to make a big difference in our oil consumption, do something about cars. That's the bottom line. We know we have lots of different statistics about energy and building and coal usage and whether we can use hydroelectric for things, and wind power is a little bit more than solar power and that kind of thing. And these are all great statistics about how we change energy usage, but when we're purely focused on oil, cars are the biggest problem that we have, cars and light trucks. So I, as a Marine, fighting in a very oil-rich area of the world, lost my two of my good friends in the Marine Corps. One was my partner from Scout Sniper School, and the other one was my first operations officer. And I got this feeling, one, I could be next. Two, I had a child and another one on the way, and they could be next. And what was the reason for doing this? We were in the middle of an area of the world at the time that I was there where people aren't extremely well educated throughout the mass of the society. And there is no middle class. And it doesn't matter if you're in Kuwait or if you're in the Emirates or whether you're in Iran or whether you're in Iraq or whether you're in any place around the Middle East. Oil has corrupted a region of the world, and it has caused a great deal of social degradation and education. And my feeling was, why are we doing this? Like, why, as a human race, are we sitting around and creating these structures which are sort of bent on massive wealth flowing to an area that doesn't even allocate it very well, to be honest? And then we fight over the peace in that area is basically the best way to put it. I'm not a believer that the U.S. is there sort of raping oil from the area, but the whole fact that oil exists there, the whole world is focused on every place, whether it's Venezuela or whether it's in the tar sands in Canada or whether it's in that. Oil is an issue. It's a serious issue. And so I was thinking to myself, what can I do beyond my time in the Marine Corps that will make a difference? And that's what landed me with locomotors. Cars make a big difference in oil consumption. I loved cars. And I had some legacies that I needed to carry on, both for my friends that had died and also for my children. And so I said, it couldn't be worse than getting shot. It couldn't be harder than doing that. And so starting a car company is hard, but if that's my alternative and we're going to have a world like that, why not give it a shot? So if you have any questions about why I did it, that's it. That was the reason. And at the time, you can go to the next slide. At the time, this is a legacy. My granddad owned the Indian Motorcycle Company. So if you need a leg up in the car industry, it's helpful to have a grandfather that owned an iconic brand. He lost every bit of money he had in the Indian Motorcycle Company, and that makes it even more spectacular. So for everybody around here who's starting a company, fail big, and you'll be remembered as the lesson. These are other people that either failed big or succeeded. You've got Gordini up at the top, is a massively great French engine engineer. You've got, anybody know the person on the top right? Any guesses? This is the great Pininfarina. So he designed his design house designed most of the Ferraris that you'll see today, and a lot of the Lamborghinis that you see, famous ones, not the Miura, but other ones. And then down here, you've got Ferry Porsche, and then over here you have Preston Tucker. I mean, these were some automotive luminaries, most of which failed, some of which succeeded. Primarily Porsche succeeded, unless you consider what's happening with Porsche today, where it sort of flipped around, and suddenly it was Porsche was buying Volkswagen, and now it looks like Volkswagen is eating up Porsche, and it won't be the company that it once was. But here was a guy that was a disruptive innovator in the auto industry. He took Volkswagen parts that everybody knew, and he put a teardrop Porsche on top of it and said, voila, here's a Porsche. That was it. He changed the body, and he changed the production methodology, and he used a very well understood set of parts and created an iconic brand that really today, actually, I would like to say, has not changed that much, and I don't think that's that great for automotive production. There's a lot of things in design we could do, but that non-production style has been around for a while. And then you have this trend that's happening, the do-it-yourself trend, which I think is fascinating. It's not a natural trend that necessarily goes along with trying to reduce consumption or other things like that. It sort of is. It's sort of related. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, but it's just here. And it's here to stay. It's part of why Gangplank is what it is. It's a kind of like, I'm going to get up and do my own thing. And it's all over the world. Really an interesting trend and a really interesting phenomenon, whether it's growing your own plants, whether it's, which is also known as do-it-yourself, growing your own plants is known as farming. And whether it's doing code, which we very much understand, database management, or open source software for operating systems, that kind of thing is something that in this room we probably know better and know well. And then there's the do-it-yourself home stuff, which is what's made Home Depot, you can do it, we can help. Lowe's, let's build something together. You have IKEA, which is why don't you come in and do all the labor for us? And so, but we like it. If I can saw cut my own tile, I'm going to like cut my finger, and I'm going to curse, and I'm going to yell. My wife and I are going to get in a fight. But in the end, we did our own bathroom. So I think that's the trend that we're also seeing, and it's kind of fun because it allows some things in the automotive world that weren't necessarily intuitive. The car industry has gone on this idea that, like, you want to spend money, you want a car, you don't want to wait for it, you just want to give me cash and I give you car. But then what happens with that is, what if the tires catch on fire? Whose fault is that? Well, it's the car companies, of course. I paid you my hard-earned money and your tires caught on fire. But were you running them underinflated? Did you change them when they were supposed to be changed? And then all of a sudden lawsuits are developed. So insurance companies have big premiums in order to be able to do it. We've engendered this very, very complex set of regulations around the way in which we like to buy and own and service and use and destroy the cars that we have. So when you think about somebody becoming more attached to their product and bringing do-it-yourself more into cars, you train a better user. And that's really the reason why we get into this pretty deeply. We get very zen about it. Somebody who comes to us, there's sort of two profiles. Hello, what's your name? Roy. Roy, I make cars. Is that cool? Yeah. Cool. That's our car. You like it? Okay. It's yours. Right? But you have to come and build it with us. Do you think that's a good idea or not? You think it's fantastic. Great. I'm Jay. Jose, nice to meet you. I'm going to talk for Jose for a second. So, Jose, I'm making a car. You think it's a good idea? Yeah, I think it's great. Jose, you have to come and build it with us. I would never do that. That's the second kind of person that we need. I don't know whether you actually would have said it. I don't want to chase around the whole room for somebody who wouldn't have done it. But the idea is because generally in crowds that are interested in what we're doing, we can never find people like that. But the idea is that there are not a lot of people out there who never even want to come in and build a car. And you know what? They're not our customers. We don't want them. People ask us all the time and say, can I just pay you money or have somebody else build it for you? And that's not the point. As you can see sort of what we're talking about here, it's about making you a prosumer of what we do. You're getting involved. You're getting involved on the net. You're getting involved in get-togethers. We call them burgers, cars, and welding. You call them gangplank, brown bags. It's just a physical get-together where you can give things and you can prosume. Anybody ever heard that phrase before, prosuming? Okay, so it's just reaching in before you actually consume something to actually help it get to be made. So, okay, so this is like a little bit of an eye bleed chart, but there's a reason for it. And we're going to kind of flip through a little bit, Katie, if you could. 2 products, 2 different methodologies. Crowdsourcing is a word that probably most people in here have heard of before. I hate the word crowdsourcing because we started crowdsourcing our designs, and then what happened is we started to talk to the people who were giving designs over to our community, though protected by Creative Commons, and said, you know, hey, it's so great that like you guys are part of this crowdsourcing methodology. And it didn't really work out that well because they're like, what do you mean? You know, we're giving you stuff and you're not giving us anything back. And we were continually fighting that. And the truth is, we weren't taking. And so it wasn't crowdsourcing. Whenever we came up with a car, it was co-created. We did it together, this team. So you've got Dave Ria over there in a white hat, raise his hand. You've got John DeMolke over there who's filming in the tan right there. You've got Nico DePayer who's back there in the other flight suit. What's up, brother? Flight suits, cool. So I mean, you got our team, and we were building stuff. You know, Nico is a designer, Dave is an engineer, John is working on the sales side for us, and we were spending a lot of time working on this concept. And it wasn't just all take and no give; it was a lot of go back and forth. So, you know, Jeff Howe coined this term crowdsourcing in the book, and Wired Magazine went with it, and it all sounded great, but I'd rather sort of see if we can change it. And if we can't change the term, I'm not going to fight the power, I'm at least going to explain why I think the term sucks. So, and this is what's meant to be about that. So product, we'll go to the next one. And I'm going to kind of go through these quickly because the idea is to sort of get to the end. This is crowdsourcing. It's sort of your traditional walls divide the contributors on the outside. They're not really as much focused on what each other are doing, and they're focused on sort of pleasing the inner circle, you know, the sort of grand wizard of Oz, if you will. So things are coming in, and then you've got customers that are part of your online community that are sort of giving you some feedback or not. We have to be honest with ourselves. You know, Threadless, maybe every one of your contributors can be a customer. It's a t-shirt company that online t-shirt designs, many people have seen it. Maybe, is anybody wearing a Threadless shirt in here? Right there. Okay, so but you have, okay? So Threadless works where this customer block is pretty big, but in cars it's not. Like, cars are expensive and not everybody's gonna want our car, and so the customer block from the community is a little bit smaller. But we sure have a lot of people coming in from the outside. 136 countries right now at last count. We have like almost 60,000 designs on the site, and lots of comments beyond those designs. You don't just have to put a design in the site to be meaningful to the community. So it's a lot more like this, in my mind, where contributors are talking to each other, we're talking to the contributors, and the customers are talking to them too, and we're sort of all around the product. And then you go forward. And then those ideas kind of come in to what makes the product, instead of it just being a one-way funnel. And the most egregious example of this is sort of like the Michelin design competition, where you design a car, it goes every 2 years, you send in a videotape in a little envelope, and you send it into the judges, and you never hear anything until you make it to the final round. And then they have one token voting round where they'll show the best concepts, but there's no feedback, it's just feed in, and then somebody is chosen from that. And the judges get another chance to say, whatever the community liked, we get to choose whether we want it or not. That's sort of crowdsourcing at its worst, where it all comes in and it just sort of dies right there. Okay, so that's our belief. So if we take on faith, at least this is what we believe, that co-creation is the way to go. The other question that comes up a lot for us is, how are you all open source? Like, open design is part of what the co-creation process is, but then you have this other word that's floating out there, like open source. And what does that mean? And I say it's kind of this. If you could hit the next slide, it's like, co-creation is the process for us of making an egg, and then like when that egg begins to move down into the world of being used, being open source is a choice that you have to make. You could co-create something and then keep it closed, and we've chosen not to do that. So it basically just keeps the process open. As the egg grows into the chicken, we allow you to see what the bones are made of, how we made it, how we all together came to it, so that it can be modded and fixed and helped, which is very much what the auto industry is about. You take your car and you want the seatbelts to be mounted in a different place, you want GoPro cameras on the rear, you want to have different seats, you want to chip the engine, you want to do all the stuff that happens naturally in the car industry. So keeping it open is very important to us, allowing you to see the build sequence, allowing you to see how the chassis comes together with a 3D file, how the body comes together, where we get things, what the bill of materials is made of, is important for somebody who's going to modify the car. That's sort of just trying to keep these terms for us. It's hard for me to even think about it a lot of the time. So that's the way we look at crowdsourcing, and then the way we look at open source for the product. Best example that I could give you here. And when we create these things, we can iterate them again and again and again. Okay, so what we promise is to make cool cars. That's what we do. We won't make hundreds of thousands of cool cars. What we will do is make cars that are meaningful and relevant to the communities in which we come. So we're here in Phoenix as the best proof of what that is. Rally Fighter is a great performance desert off-road racing vehicle. It is not meant for everyone in Phoenix, but it is meant for a community of which we just had number 101 sold this morning. Right there. Right there. I love it. Okay, so the next one. And this is what sort of keeps it on task for us. Local Motors is about making cool cars. Not all about acronyms, but it does help to remember. If we stand for anything, it's not for speed, it's not for off-road, it's not for color choices in your cars. These are sort of the four things. If you ask, like, what is Tesla Motors? What is Local Motors? What is Ford Motors? This is what we are, which is pretty much on every axis different than those two companies or any of the other ones. We have a community, the likes of which the Ford F-150 forum does not even approach, because it's a deep community, but it's not one that's very engaged in being involved in the creation of the car. We have that. We have an open community, the likes of which has never been done in the car industry before. There's never been a car company out there that has decided to turn over all of their data and make it available. In terms of an ownership experience, again, we differentiate ourselves because you come and build it with us. That's your ownership experience. Again, very, very different. And local, we set up our micro factories in places which are very meaningful. We get the word out and we spend time. And we actually, from a point of view of marketing, we don't spend any money over outside of our radius. So our radius is a 5-hour radius. That's kind of how we picked it. 5 hours to me is the distance you drive on a Friday afternoon to do something wild and crazy. And so on a Friday afternoon, if you're done with work, maybe if you're even wild and crazy, you do it on a Wednesday after work, and you drive all night, you go see something, and then you come back in the morning or something like that. That's the distance I used to go to drive to get a fresh donut. I love donuts. What's the best donut place in Phoenix? Somebody help me out. Does anyone know?
Bosa Donuts in Chandler.
In Chandler?
Yeah, Bosa.
Bosa Donuts. Okay, that's actually, they don't have to drive 5 hours. That's awesome. So in any case, I think that's the distance you drive to do something wild and crazy, and that's what our 5-hour radius is about. That's where we spend money to market a vehicle. We get calls already, as you would expect, from things like the Rob Report, DuPont Registry, and the sort of car mags, and they want us to put ads in them so that they can sell to the fixed base operators all over the world, so everybody who flies a private jet can learn about our sweet car. But one, we don't sell a $200,000 car, we sell a $50,000 car. So suddenly we're even below their price point. Like we're too low to be cool for the ultra rich. And then the other thing about it is that I don't want to be in a fixed base operator in Dubai and in China and in other places, because I can't make that many rally fighters. I can put a factory in that area and then make cars for that. But what I'm focused on is I build tooling that can make 2,000 of these, and I want to sell them within a 5-hour radius of Phoenix. Sure, if a customer comes in from farther away, that's a good thing, but they have to come here to build it. So it's going to be more of a pain in the butt for them to come and do that. And that's okay. We'd like to set up a facility in 30 or 50 different places around the country and do it that way. Grow locally from place to place. These are some of the competitions that we run. We choose the competition theme with our community. We do some tiny chats. We do open calls. We ask for ideas, and then we set the direction. We co-create the process, even in which we decide what geography or psychography or ideas we wanted to do. So these are some examples of ones that either are geographically located. These are all geographically located, or if you go to the next one, these are some of the ideas that have come out of those. And a lot of people will say to us, God, those are so futuristic, you'll never see those on the road. But that's the whole point of Local Motors. We've been trained that things that are futuristic you'll never see on the road. That's bullshit. Why would you have to live in that way? We do, because there are only 12 consumers, there are only 12 producers that we consume from. And so we take what they give us. And there's not some mean, evil person at the head of each of those companies. It's just that we as people, when we organize in that way, we get wrapped around the axle, literally. So here's the Rally Fighter. You've seen it in real life. Slide. These are the things directly that we have worked on. So we did a competition for the Sidemen that was won by a Swiss man named Rafael Laurent. And then the interior concept was designed by a Romanian, Mihai Panatescu. The vinyl wrap for the next one that we're doing was won by Derek Slagata, who's a Mexican designer. The light fixture for the roof was designed by Polish-born Australian living designer Philip Jajerski. And the concept was originally penned by Sambo Kim. And this is how we bring parts together. We build the chassis, we build the bodies, we build the bones, and we build the body, the skin, and the glass we design and then have that made. What we don't do is we don't do tail lights, we don't do steering wheels, lights, door handles, and all of the other SKUs that go on the car. We'll buy them, we'll scan them in 3D, use a 3D scanner, and then we'll put them in the car. And for things like taillights, a taillight program, just to sort of get into the nitty-gritty of building cars, it's $1 million to have your own taillight program. You're going to pay $1 million just to have those cans designed. And then they have to pass DOT. And so it's something that's really expensive. That means if I'm only selling 1,000 cars, I never do math in public, by the way. But I'm going to try. Okay, I can get some help. If it's $1 million program that you have to spend to get a taillight, and you're only going to sell 1,000 cars, I said 2,000, we're trying to make the math easy on it. Is 1,000, how much is that per taillight? $1,000, yes. Do math in public. 500 if you go by 2 taillights. And if you go by 2 taillights, it's 500 per car.
You're
okay?
crowdsourcing math.
What'd you say?
You're crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing math. That's right, just all take it. So, awesome. And I'm going to assume that you're right, and if not, I'm going to turn it all back. So, thank you. So the bottom line is that's expensive, because if I go out and buy a tail light from an aftermarket parts supplier, that's going to be close to $500. And so that's just the amortized cost of development. What about the actual injection molding, the light bulb cost, and everything else like that? If you could get that for $200 or $100, now it's a $500 per tail light plus the injection molded and the part cost, and we're not even making any money on it, you know. And so that just math doesn't work for every part of the car, and it doesn't have to, because you have these great products that are out. This is something that Porsche sort of had with Volkswagen, and that's how he got away with it. This is something that Tucker did not have. He went with GM as sort of a producer of parts, and what we're banking on is the fact, and it amazes me. We were in a discussion, if you look at the Rams that lift that hood, we were in a discussion one day of saying, okay, so we want the hood to do this, and we want it to sort of come on, because it looks cool when hoods go up like that. And there's actually function. If the latch breaks, and you're going down the road, the hood doesn't go poof, and then fly up and fly off. We do a lot of bouncing, so there's a chance that the latches could break. And so if it does, it stays down. So we knew we wanted to do this clamshell routine with the roof. It also gets it out of the way so you can get into work on the engine, which is farther back. But we needed Rams that would lift it. And we just got on the internet. I mean, I say it that way because it amazes me. 20 years ago, if you're John DeLorean, 50 years ago, if you're Preston Tucker, that thing didn't exist. You couldn't go and say, and what we did is we were like, those Rams are too short and not powerful enough. Give me one that's 1 inch longer and has 10 more PSI in it. We just go on the internet and buy it. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. And so, I mean, you can build a car company in a way that you forget how different the world is right now. And I think I just stop on those little quaint moments that really just wow me a lot. And we can talk about that, Chris.
Like the headlight itself, investment?
This headlight is actually a third-party aftermarket taillight built in a standard size can. And so there are lots of round headlights out there from the things like Volkswagen Beetles or other things like that. And so this is an aftermarket headlight.
And the taillight is off for
Taillight, anybody know the taillight? No? Close.
Civic?
the Max or C.
No.
It's not a car.
It's a Honda Civic Coupe. And so, and if somebody said it, anybody know this? Yeah, exactly. So the cool thing is, and then if you look, like you can see the gas cap cover back there. That's a Eclipse. It's an Eclipse. I mean, we're taking a body shape that is designed by Sangho and then co-created with the crowd, and then we're trying to put these parts on it. Like we need a door handle all of a sudden. So we'll throw out a couple of door handles that work. We looked at the GTR, which is the new Nissan. We try to look at things that are in production or just out of production that have loads of capacity. If I'm making 2,000 cars over the entire life of the Rally Fighter, there are some distributors which could probably sell me 2,000 Miata door handles right now. And I don't even have to go to the tier 1 supplier that made them. And then there are aftermarket producers that will do them in different colors and do them in different finishes and things like that. So it allows you to build low volume and actually have something that looks different. And the community helps with us to get the things to look good. That Eclipse panel would look really crappy if we just slapped it on the side of the car, because its curvature is not exactly the curvature of the vehicle. But when you can 3D scan something and you can move it around in the computer to sort of put it in a place that looks almost right, and then you can sink it in a little bit and put a bevel on it, you haven't really spent that much money. You're only spending money when you take a machine that actually cuts the mold, and then it has to look good. And And so we're about trying to take design, and this is why I was sort of pinging on Porsche a little bit. We're trying to take design and consistently move it forward quickly. Make iconic design as many times as we can. And that's hard. You need to crowdsource it. I mean, American Idol delivers popular musicians because not everybody is a great singer. You get William Hung up on stage. He's funny, you know. She bangs, oh baby, when she moves, and he sort of stands up. And so, I mean, and then you get great musicians that come along a lot more infrequently. Maybe we don't all agree that that's good music, but it's popular for a lot of people to buy. It's the same thing with cars. You get people that love the Volkswagen Beetle, they love the Mini, but the unfortunate thing about that is the Mini is derivative, I think. I mean, it's been around for so long, and it might be great for somebody that wants that sort of historic look, but what about somebody who wants something more futuristic? I mean, we do it in our clothing. We buy things that have never been around before. We do it in our sunglasses. We don't do it in our cars that much. So that's my soapbox. I'm standing on it. And so this is our community. Green means where we have a lot of people. Dark green is where we have fewer in concentration, and gray are places that Local Motors hasn't come yet. So, and then everywhere you see a red dot is where we have a competition winner from. Next slide. This is the old auto industry. It takes a lot of time, 7 years, to bring a car to market from ground up, from a sketch to an idea. It takes a ton of people, very well trained in a union usually, a big factory, and a boatload of money. And for us, a very short period of time, the Rally Fighter has taken us about 18 months of consistent development time. Small number of people, very small micro factory, and a very small amount of money. But there is a difference in output. This can make 100,000 cars a year out of the model, but they have to make that many, and they have to do it over a very long period of time, because that's how you amortize this big pot of money. We can only make a smaller amount, but we don't have to make them as many, and that can mean that maps better to regional production of cars. We can be profitable doing it. This is where our customers are. One of the things we made a choice in the beginning is every time we sell a product, so when number 101 sold, it now says number 102 is for sale on our site. And there was a day where it said number 1 is for sale. That means we had sold 0 cars. As far as I know, we're the only car company that does that real time shows you how many cars we've sold. And that was a choice we made in the beginning to be out there and be part of the co-creation process. If it's not popular, everybody ought to know. So we've been on sale for 10 months, and we've been selling cars where you cannot even test drive them. And we have 101 deposits for cars. Now, they're only $99 deposits, so that means you can back out. It's fully refundable. It's fully transferable. But when we call you 2 to 3 months out and we ask for a $5,000 deposit, that's when you become a true member of Local Motors, where you're going to come in, you get your name on the wall, and you build a car with us. And I don't expect every one of our deposit holders to hold it, but we know every one of our deposit holders. And one of the jobs that John and the team that he works with has is to get to know all those people really intimately and hear what they want. And maybe they're not going to buy right now, but it is something that they are looking forward into the future. And so that's something that we want to learn from as much as possible. This is where everybody is, and the bigger the dot is, the more where people are from, and we have more concentration. Next slide. This is how we produce. We produce with a jig structure for building things. Next, answer questions about that. This is how we build our bodies, through a molded part that is cut, and then a mold is made off of that, and then we pull body parts off of that. It makes for very lightweight composite structures that build a vehicle. Next. This is how we coat the cars. It's all a vinyl wrap. So this was taken off of the buses that you see in the NASCAR industry, a way of basically being able also to co-create designs and be able to have customers run competitions for a design that they want. I want something matte. I want something gloss. I want brown. Cary Grant's my favorite actor. Grace Kelly is my favorite actress. You know, I like this product. I like nothing on my car. I like these, and then send that out to a competition. Our community goes to work and delivers you 10, 20, 30, 100 designs, and then the winner gets paid for designing that design. We print it, and it goes on your car. You can do that when it's vinyl wrap. And it also means, because you're not painting, you're not increasing the volatile organic compounds that are going out of a micro factory, and so that means that you can get close to people and create a micro factory. That's what vinyl wrapping can do for you. It's really exciting. Nope. The result for us is, if you could click forward twice, it's 5 times faster, because that's 7 years versus about 16 months is what we think we can get to soon, and then 12 months is what we really think we might be able to get down to, and it's 100 times less capital in the development of a car. This is a big result. This is a major deal. This means that we can bring new technology in faster, because if we have a small run, we can say, okay, we're building a car locally for Louisiana. Louisiana actually has natural gas production, and it has natural gas refueling. I haven't seen a natural gas refueling station around here at all since I've been here. So, what'd you say? So that's just not enough to own a car. I mean, you driving to Heligon to refuel your car. But in Louisiana, you can refuel with natural gas, and there are plenty of natural gas conversion kits that are already out there. So why not make a car that has natural gas as one of its ways of running if you're going to make a car that's local to New Orleans or Shreveport or a city in Louisiana? That's what 5 times faster can mean. That's what 100 times less capital can mean. Make a car that's relevant to an area. And if you're going to move from that area, then maybe that means you sell that car and you give it to somebody else who's going to stay in that area. Slide. Just some pics of the rally fighter in the wild. Go through, quick through. That's on our desert testing. It's almost 100 miles an hour in the desert. That's when we really started having to wear a helmet. This is a design that's out there, very sports car-like. Maybe it'll be a future locomotives design. Another one, very sporty, inline seating. This make you feel like a jet pilot. That's designed by another one. This is a shooting brake design, more like hatchback, made for San Francisco. Super cool design. This one was made as a hunting vehicle for Texas. Really light thing to get by. This was done for New England as a 3-seater, something that's more sort of a coupe that has some retro feel to it, but also some very modern feel to it. And that's what we're about. That's it.
So if you were to buy one, how much skill or mechanical skill do you need to be part of the building process?
We're aiming for you to do 60 hours of work on your car. And that we think will be about 50% of the work that needs to be done on the car. And we'd like to take everybody from a novice to an expert. And that's actually part of what we're looking for. When you really want to do this, we think that you're the kind of person that probably wants to meet people who are more expert than you at whatever level you are. And so it's about getting people together so that when you leave, every car is built in a little team. And so we want you to really befriend the people who are in your little team. Hopefully, not everybody will become friends. And so you get together afterwards and you go on tours with your rally fighter. You'll take it places. You'll make friends you never knew you never had. So novice to expert mixed together. And if you're the kind of person that comes in and sets a wrench down on 2 terminals of a battery and you see what happens when that happens, you are still one of our customers. Because you learn really fast when the sparks start flying that you shouldn't have done that. And the question is, how do people treat you? And we will treat you really fairly. We'll tell you why it happened. You had the best learning experience, and there were probably other 5 other people that would have done the same thing. You just unlucky you did it first. And so the idea is about making you feel wanted and making you feel knowledgeable. Dave tells a great story of the first time somebody really pinged him on his Cobra. He built a Cobra, which is beautiful. Hopefully you all get a chance to see it come down. And he pulled up at a gas station. He was refueling it. And he looks youthful. He is 45 years old. Just teasing. But I mean, he looks youthful, and the guy said to him from across the thing, "You better take Daddy's car home when you're finished with it." And Dave was like, "I built it." So I mean, there's nothing to shut down somebody who's trying to sort of destroy your manhood and to say that you built your own car. So novice to expert.
How do you go about making these street legal for the national level as well as state to state, all the different regulations?
It's a great question. So making the car street legal, there are 2 things that make a car street legal. One is from a point of view of meeting federal motor vehicle safety standards. That's basically crash. And then the second one is, does it meet EPA guidelines and relevant state guidelines for smog or other things like that? So those are sort of the 2 things that make a car street legal. The hardest one to meet most of the time is making it smog legal, because there are constructs in every state, every one of the 50 states, that allow you to custom build your own car, but there aren't constructs in an increasingly large number of states. There are no constructs to get around the emissions regulations. You have to have a car that meets emissions, and the 2 toughest states are California and Massachusetts. And so the California Air Resources Board basically sets the standard for U.S. EPA. So the answer is, our engines are EPA legal. So you're not going to have to miss a smog certification when you come in and do it. Every engine we put in this thing will allow you to pass the toughest state regulation. So that's half of your street legality. The second half is it's a custom built car. So you come in and you build more than 50% of the car with it. It's your car, you build it. And so that doesn't mean we're not passing off the safety. It doesn't mean that we haven't endeavored to do it. We are becoming a partner in this. And it's something where big car companies spend really around $30 million is the price tag to take a car through the entire slate of federal motor vehicle safety standard tests. But there is no government inspector that comes along and says, check 1, check 2, fail 3, check 4. That doesn't exist. So what it is the federal motor vehicle safety standards are promulgated in Title 49, which is the Code of Federal Regulations governing autos, and it says your blinker, your left-hand blinker and your right-hand blinker need to be green, and they need to be of a certain size, and they need to be of a certain shape. They need to look like this. So we meet all of those standards because we buy already DOT compliant dashboard signatures that are there. And then there's the question of how high is your bumper, how high are your lights, those sorts of things. They're all standards that you have to meet FMVSS, and we've built this vehicle to meet those. What we didn't do is we exempted ourselves on airbag, and that's been something that has been part of the construct for custom-built vehicles. Custom-built vehicles across the country have been able to be registered without having an airbag, and that's not something that we offer on the car. Now, an airbag could make you safer in a car that is very small. In a car that is very large and where you're well belted, it's arguable that an airbag is not going to increase your safety. But it's buyer beware when you come to do it. We make a car to federal motor vehicle safety standards with some very clear exemptions, like an airbag. And we let you know everything that goes on. I drive the same car. I put my kids in the car and take them to school. And it's about a connection that's very different